What is protocol really? Is it just what I see? They think of state dinners, royal coronations, military ceremonies. That's just a tiny bit of what protocol is. Protocol is needed whenever organizations or people come together to meet. You make sure that you give them the right respect, making sure that they are seen as the greater authority because they're the potential client.
How do we embrace AI and protocol?
We're not even close to having AI replace protocol officers. What is respectful in one culture is not exactly the same as what is respectful in another. I am sorry is a full sentence. We don't have to say, I'm sorry, but, that went through, but don't say but.
When you hear the word protocol, what comes to your mind? Embassies, diplomats, state dinners. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a meeting where the tone felt off, where boundaries were unclear, where someone's behavior shifted the entire atmosphere? That is protocol. Have you ever watched a leader command a room without raising a single voice? That is protocol. Have you ever seen disagreement handled with calm and clarity without people? That is protocol too. But if protocol is not a ceremony, but invisible architecture of leadership, and that is true though, why do so many industries, leaders, professional, doesn't think is applied to them? To explore this today, I'm joined by a wonderful person, amazing architect of this, who has lived and breathed with protocol. She has led protocol strategy at one of the American most respected universities, best institution accreditation across continent. Now serve as a president of the leading global situation for protocol professional. She doesn't see protocol as a performance, she sees it as a structure. Alfred, welcome to Manners Maketh Mic.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm delighted to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about how I see protocol as not just a performance or a ceremony, but really the foundation for everyone's work to elevate it to the next level.
Excellent. Alfred, for those listening for the first time, can you give a brief glimpse of your journey to date, how protocol has become your language?
That is a fantastic question. I've had a career that has taken me in a lot of different areas. And when I look back at it, I have been using protocol throughout it. But what initially took me into the study and the practice of protocol was a position that I had in higher education. And I was working with a lot of international visitors. And my supervisor and I were hosting visitors, scheduling meetings, and hopefully, thankfully, we didn't have any kind of mistakes. But I started to worry that maybe that was just luck and we needed to get a little bit more training and a little bit more structure around it. So I was very grateful to have the opportunity to go to the Protocol School of Washington and take their protocol officer training and to learn more about what I thought was going on, but to really get that foundation. And ever since then, I have been hooked on protocol. I've just loved what it does, whether you're dealing with cross cultures, different industries and how they communicate differently, or just getting people together to build positive relationships. So I've jumped in and studied it and really made it a part of my role no matter what I'm doing. So that has been going on for the last 10 years. And I've been just felt so fortunate to be able to work with many people throughout the world and to share what my view of protocol is and how it is much broader, much more expansive than a lot of people think.
When you hear the word protocol, we all see it as indigenous, like I said in my opening, ceremony. And you've led all these institutions, corporates, dignities. What do someone that you meet first at protocol industry, protocol professional, what comes to your mind first?
I think that the first thing a lot of people say to me is, "Oh, I didn't know that's a job." So they do want to hear more about it. Um, but their view of protocol is a pretty small slice of what we do. They think of state dinners, royal coronations, military ceremonies, things that they see frequently in the media. And as with so many different parts of our lives, what we see shown over and over in social media and news and online, that shapes our idea of what it is. But as I said, that's just a tiny bit of what protocol is. Protocol is needed whenever organizations or people come together to meet. It sets the stage for successful interactions and for respect. So whether you're in corporate, universities, churches, nonprofits, any type of industry, it doesn't have to be just government or military. And whether you're dealing with a high level event like a state visit or a small meeting, uh, every bit of protocol can support that and make sure that it's successful. So it truly does span all industries.
Moving on with us, we are not in this generation. We call them Gen Z. Do you think they also have a same mindset as protocol in with the internet, or do you think they have more knowledgeable with where we are when it comes to that way?
Yeah, I think that people see protocol in lots of different ways, and it does the generations do influence how we view it. Fortunately, my experience has been that younger generations. I'm Gen Z myself, so I'm working with a lot of younger generations. They're really open to this, and they want to learn more about, well, what is protocol really? Is it just what I see on on a news site, or is there something else to it? And when I sit down and I talk with them about the foundations, about respect, about consideration for others, and especially how inclusive protocol is, they really do embrace that. And you can see some excitement in their eyes about what protocol is when you talk about that. So I've been really grateful that this is not something that is sort of getting stuck in older generations, because protocol, etiquette, all of those things do have this reputation of they're stuffy and they're old. But when you talk about what the core of it is, um, all generations are embracing it and saying, "Oh, I get that. I understand why that actually has meaning, and it's not just a set of rules that belong on a dusty shelf."
And why protocol has become something associated with embedded and thinking why?
I think it goes back to that concept of that's what we see. And the word protocol, it sounds very strict. It sounds like something that's only for a certain industry. So when we take the time to talk about protocol as not just, oh, it's a set of rules that diplomats use, but it really is a foundation for building relationships and creating trust by being respectful, by understanding what people's expectations are when they come to a meeting or a ceremony or a visit. When we talk about it as what that core, as those core principles, then it expands beyond, oh, that has to just be for an embassy. I can't do that because I work in higher education or I work in a nonprofit. When it's explained as those core principles, it opens the door to see how protocol supports everything that we do and how it creates the right environment to meet strategic goals. So, when you're in a corporate situation and you're introducing a potential client, or you're in a university and you are arranging seating for a meeting between your university president and another university president to explore a partnership, and you do that in the right way, it creates calm, it creates confidence, and it allows those those strategic goals to really be the focus rather than any kind of nervousness about who is who and what's really happening here.
I've got a question here. My cousin works for one of the US federal government. I wouldn't give names. And when it comes to London, he used the word, I work for government, we follow protocol. And then I matched that to my own business. I also do protocol but in leadership. You get confused because, like you said, he thinks that that's his protocol for the federal government to follow. So my question is, if you have to explain this to protocol in a sentence, to CEO, to principals, to creative founders, how do you define that? Because I have come across my own cousin that he get confused. How do you define this?
I like to explain protocol as something we already practice every day. It's the courtesies that we extend based on positions, and they signal mutual respect. And by doing that, they build trust and they make sure that everybody starts from an even playing field. So if I were talking to a school principal, I might say, you practice protocol every day when you address your superintendent a certain way, or you make sure that they have the right seat at the table so that they can see everyone and can address their group. If I were talking to a creative, somebody who's an entrepreneur, I would put it in a little bit of a different context, but saying, when you're meeting a client, somebody who's coming to you because they are interested in your art or your content, you make sure that you give them the right respect by introducing correctly, by making sure that they are seen as the greater authority because they're the potential client. You give them that respect. You make sure that they feel honored in the interaction. And that's protocol. These are these core principles that we go back to. So by putting it into concepts that relate to what the person is doing, it takes it out of that idea of, oh, it's only diplomats that do this. I actually do this, and I do it well when I treat people respectfully.
Then I just so example of example is I do travel a lot, like I said, I travel to Middle East and Saudi and Africa and Europe. Do you think there's protocol different to each countries, or this is just the way it's designed for us institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the core principles of protocol are the same across countries, across cultures, across industries, but how we see them might be a little bit different because what is respectful in one culture is not exactly the same as what is respectful in another. Yeah, as an example, here in the United States, we're a very egalitarian society. Everything tends to be pretty flat. We don't embrace hierarchy in the same way. So we tend to go toward first names, even with somebody who might be in a very high ranked position
Oh, wait.
or be senior to us in some way. And that's seen as good communication. It's seen as building a relationship. So that conveys a certain type of respect. But in another country, that's not respectful at all. So having an understanding of what those nuances are and how they differ across countries and across cultures is really important because you can adjust your own style to meet people where they are. And that even works across industries too. A tech industry is going to have a very different concept of what is respectful business
Uh-huh.
attire than an investment banking industry would. I might look out of sorts if I came to a tech meeting in the suit that I'm wearing right now, and they might think, does she know where she
Yep.
is? Does she know what we value here? But if I showed up in a casual shirt and a pair of jeans going to a government meeting, I'm going to get some real side eye because I'm not being respectful of what is seen as appropriate behavior there. So, while all these elements might be similar, they show differently across cultures.
I'm going to give an example that happened to me years ago. So I was in the state, Colorado, Denver, and most days when I'm at work wearing tie suits, and my team was like, "Why are you so dressed up?" Even when I go to the mall, it's that's so wow. But I'm from British, where in the business we were this kind of Nice. So, in my difficult is I'm following the protocol from back home in Britain and also my work protocol. Gus, you've mentioned amazing comment about creative industry, how we work, stuff and IT. Do you feel this too at these days where we work casual? What's it to apply to us?
I believe that we have to be true to who we are in how we show up, but we also want to make others comfortable. And you know, I am someone that, like you, I like to be in something that's a little bit more formal. It makes me feel more confident. It's where I feel like that's who I am because of my background, how I've grown up, where I've worked. But if I am going into a situation where others are not going to be as dressed up, I might need to tone that down a little bit. Not change who I am, but maybe pick something that's a little bit less formal so that I make them comfortable. So that I go into that and recognize where they are. That's always my advice on it, to not be something different, but think about where it creates the most comfortable environment for others, and how you approach that.
Again, there's a auto protocol because you have the
Yes.
awareness of your
Yeah.
surroundings than the access someone
uh,
within what they do your work.
Very much so.
So, in your experience, what actually happens in an organization where protocol is absent?
I believe that if there is not protocol, if there's not structure, it makes it very difficult to build trust. When there is a lack of structure, and there's a lot of research on this, people feel more anxiety. They feel better, safer when there are some guidelines, when they have some guardrails. So when you constantly are in a situation that you don't know what you should be doing, you don't feel psychologically safe. And when you don't feel psychologically safe, you can't fully trust. So when people think, oh, well, a protocol is just a bunch of rules and that's controlling, and then my team's not going to think that yeah, that I'm empowering them, it's in fact the opposite. When you set the stage for, these are the ways that we work together, and this is the way that we create respect among our team and with stakeholders, people feel more free. They know what they can do, and they're actually more likely to take risks and to be more creative in how they solve problems than if they don't have any kind of structure or any kind of protocol. So it might seem a little bit counterintuitive that having rules makes people feel safer and freer, but that's what all the research does bear out.
So, later on to that, can we, is there a structure and protocol in English? Is there a structure that we need to follow? Or this is like informal situation?
You can still have protocol in informal situations because that basis is about respect. So thinking about, even if you are addressing everyone on your team by first names, you know, are you still addressing them with respect, or are you getting too casual? Uh, or how are you working with clients in that environment? You know, they might need a little bit more formality before they really get
Mhm.
to be well known to your team. And so you don't have to be stuffy, you don't have to be rigid about your behavior, but think about what your parameters are. Maybe it's not calling everybody Mr. last name or Ms. last name, but maybe you do a little bit of work on, is this something the client would want before we start first names, or giving them the context to say, this is what we do here, are you okay with me being less formal, or do you prefer to not go down that road just yet until we've gotten to know each other better. Thinking through these types of concepts and then being open and communicating about them, no matter how informal your environment typically is a really good way to set up respect and build trust.
So, with your expertise, you've worked across all institutions, industry sectors you work with. dignitaries from royals to diplomat to celebrities and you name it. Can you give an example to our audience, without giving names, where absence what we cause tension or repetition damage because we live in a generation or a place where one thing can cause huge of loss of business, trusts. What has experience been
Um,
over the years for you?
I'll give an example that I think a lot of people can relate to. Yeah, there was a situation that I was dealing with where there was a letter of invitation being written to a high level diplomatic official from another country. And the letter was written in English. English was not that person's first language. So someone who was fluent in the language did a translation of that letter, and both were sent out. After the fact, I discovered that the person's title had not been translated correctly. It was a direct translation, but it was not a nuanced translation that meant the same thing that we were intending. So not only had this official been addressed in their first language incorrectly, but then we had conflicting pieces of paper that were there that called the person two different things. It's fine to ask somebody who is fluent in a language to do a translation, but you also need someone who understands the nuances of language and the nuances of protocol to look at something like that. And that was where things had fallen down. Unfortunately, because of that, they didn't accept the invitation, didn't even respond to it. So we're inferring that there was offense taken. And that potential relationship just didn't even get off the ground, which was unfortunate. So, you can see from this how this could happen in any industry. Right? You could be sending a letter to a possible partner,
Mhm.
someone that you want to have a contract with, someone that you want to invite to be a part of a significant ceremony, and yeah, something that seems so small, a word made a huge difference in whether that worked. I think we all could have just pumped the brakes a little bit, as they say, and taken an extra few minutes to review that. But that didn't happen, and yeah, that was it did not make the organization look good
So,
to do it.
with your experience, and this will cause reputation damage, will cause chaos, and will cause upsets, will cause break relationship with all angles. If protocol, what can we do to rectify that? Because we work with high rank official, myself and yourself. How do we say, okay, this has been the most damaging for our brand? How can we use protocol to bridge that bridge and make more learning, but also next does this happen again? What can we do?
We should learn from this. Everybody makes mistakes. We all do. It happens because we're human. But taking that time to say, where did this break down? How do we guard against this in the past? And if what happened in the past, how do we guard against it in the future? What type of training do we need to do internally to say, even though I'm sure that your boss is saying we have to get this done right now, who do you bring in to the conversation so that you ensure that even if it needs to be done right now, it needs to be done right? Because the work to repair the damage takes so much longer than it would have taken to just get it right in the first place. So there's a lot of internal work that an example like that indicates needs to be done. Who do we need to talk to? What questions do we need to be asking? How do we slow ourselves down so that we ensure the best possible result from the work that we're doing before it goes out the door? I'm a big advocate for having humility. I think that's very important in the protocol world and beyond. Being able to say, this is where we made an error and we are sorry. I am sorry is a full sentence. We don't have to say, I'm sorry, but that went through, but don't say but in that. Just say, I am sorry, we created this offense and we would like to do better. Is really not easy for everybody to do, but it's important for everybody to do. So, having the internal conversation and being able to admit externally that we didn't do what we should have here and we want to do better.
Catherine, again, you work with institutions, industries, leaders. Do you think that we need to teach protocol in every onboarding training when it's a new staff? Or do you think that we just have to let it outside organizations?
Love the idea of having protocol be a part of onboarding, because it's so essential to everything that we do. Whether you are working with someone who is going to be writing letters on behalf of a leader or a principal, or checking those before they go out, whether you're working with event planners so that they can understand why seating needs to be configured in the way that it is. With catering staff, I've had many conversations with wonderful staff members from catering who greatly appreciate understanding why they need to serve in a particular order, or why someone is seated where they are, or why we configure the room the way that we do. Giving information to everyone not only empowers them to do their job well, but it gives them the indication of why their job is important to the success of the organization. And everyone who is there, their job is important to it. We could not do anything without, each person that is hired being in sync. So I love the idea of being able to include it in onboarding. It doesn't have to be, a big 8-hour module on protocol, but integrating it into all of the different parts of what we do. How we address people, why this protocol job exists at the university, and what you contact them for. That is a huge, huge benefit to the staff to make sure that that becomes part of the culture rather than just something that's siloed off in a president's office or a special events office or something similar to that.
Moving to that, so we both work in these industries, and people come for training courses, individuals who enhance expertise. And within the onboarding, because I'm intrigued to hear your view, why we are not implementing this in a workplace, and what is the reason behind
I think it's simply just a lack of understanding of what it is. There are so many places that they just don't know what they don't know, and that's not a criticism. It's just a recognition of that. And the more that we can do as protocol professionals and trainers and advocates for the industry in helping others to understand this is what you're doing every day and this is why it's important, then it will start catching on. I know that there are a number of things that were not taught in onboarding 20, 30 years ago that are now critical parts of that. So it's a process like anything else to make sure that people know that we're there. They know that this is a knowledge base that's important, and that that they can include it, and that it's not just a nice add-on. It's actually something that will make their job better and that will make them more successful.
again, I've one that I picked from you. So leaders who lead team either break a team or the team grows. And I do believe that individuals will stay in a company based on the people around them, the structure, the hierarchy, the values. Do all leaders need to understand the protocol, not only in, like we said before, steadiness, but leadership in protocol? Do you think that leaders need to learn this from day one? Or because we need to enhance its idea? It's not in them.
I think that leaders should learn this information because it is so rooted in respect. And if people don't feel respected, they don't feel safe at work. So the more that we can do to teach leaders about, these are reasons why we address people in the way that they've told us they want to be addressed. These are reasons that we think about what someone's cultural expectations are for good communication, or for how they work together as a team. That will set a stage for a team to work well together. Because when you let those things fall apart, the team doesn't have a sense of whether they are valued. They don't have a sense of what they really should be doing and how they should be working together. So the leaders do need to set that tone from the top.
For leaders in visible roles, let's say hospitality, retails, how much of authority depends on not just what they say, but how they behave themselves?
How we conduct ourselves and how we show up in a team, at work, even in our families, that speaks volumes above the words that we say. Yeah, I think we've all heard of different research projects around for decades that talk about how much our tone and our visual presentation means in a first impression. You may have heard of the 738-55 rule, where only 7% is our words that goes into that. Yeah, we could all debate how much that means for long-term relationships, but the research is that if there is a disconnect between what we are doing and what we are saying, our brains are trained to believe what we see in the actions and put aside the words. So if you have someone who is saying be respectful, respect is important, but they don't acknowledge others in the room, they show up with a grumpy face and they snarl at people, they don't address those in their orbit by their name because maybe they're not important enough to be acknowledged. What that says is respect is not important here. No matter how many times they say, oh, respect and consideration and so forth, if they don't live it and show it, it doesn't matter. Then they're not credible. Their authority in that area is completely gone if they don't actually demonstrate it with what they do. So, the reason that there's that saying, actions speak louder than
Okay.
words.
I'm going to bring something different. So AI, technology. AI has become part of our life. How do we embrace AI and protocol? Because now it does its kind of command. It gives you what to say. Do you think the human touch of protocol, talking to people, awareness, respect, can we embrace that through the technology we live in these days?
I think that AI is an incredible tool that is out there, and I'm right now spending a lot of time learning about it. The thing that we need to remember is that these large language models, they are not thinking. We are not at that point that they are thinking or they are making discernments. What they are doing is they are matching up how words go together to mimic what they see. So it's great for asking for some information that we could react to and look at. They do really good research and put together information that is there, but they don't have the human touch. They don't understand the nuance. They're just not there yet. And I'm sure we've all heard of the stories of hallucinations by AI, and those are real and they happen and they can have huge impacts. So I think that AI is fantastic for first drafts, for doing some editing. You could in the protocol world, we could get 90% of the way there with a brief on a country that we are not familiar with ourselves, or that our leader is not familiar with. We can get that draft, but we as the ones with the training in cultural intelligence, in understanding these concepts of respect across cultures, have to go in and look and say, is this all accurate, or is there something that the AI bot in trying to put all those words together has mixed up? Is anything been hallucinated, or is there something that's missing? There's a really interesting tool that I just learned about this week when I was talking to an AI expert. It's called Notebook LM. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it can take a PDF and create a podcast
Wow.
out of it.
Wow.
Very interesting. I took a notebook that I put together for an etiquette program and put it in there just to see what it would do. And it got pretty close,
Wow.
but it doesn't know what is the most important
Correct.
thing in there. So again, probably 90% of the way there, but Yeah, so we can all come up with these tools and use, maybe you have that leader who needs to hear something rather than sit down and read a 50-page document. Could be great to use that tool and have them there. But there's still going to need to be a conversation of, okay, all of this is here, but these are the key points that I really need you to focus on, or know that the recording didn't pull out of there. So we're not even close to having AI replace protocol officers, and I think we have a role in it too.
Yeah.
As we are feeding information into these bots, we're giving more word matches for it to then have better information. So we can help combat whether it's a bias or just missing information, or any of those things that cause it to go a little bit off course.
It's intriguing to hear the AI. So if we were to embrace the multicultural workplace, the protocol form of cultural intelligence, because we all come from diverse. How does it apply? Is that form of cultural intelligence that we need to learn in protocol?
I do believe that it's a form of cultural intelligence. You've heard me say over and over again throughout this that respect is the foundation.
Yes.
And you cannot be culturally intelligent if you don't come from a place of focusing on what is respectful. When you dive into the details of protocol, you learn what others see as respectful. A lot of people will say, the golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated. I like another version of that, which I've heard referred to as the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. And that's what we do in protocol, and that's culturally intelligent, because we're seeing what those we're working with view as, what their values are, what their assumptions are about respect and consideration and honesty and integrity and all of those things. How do we address them? What courtesies we give them? Whether we are taking the time to acknowledge their position in the organization and put them in the right order of precedence. By doing all of that, we are being culturally intelligent.
So you think protocol will empower someone or restrict them? What would that be? Would that empower them or restrict them?
I think that protocol empowers. I really believe that it gives you the confidence. You feel like you have a foundation that you're acting from when you have protocol. So you do feel more empowered. Yeah, as I had mentioned a little bit ago, if we don't have that, we feel a lot of anxiety. When you feel uncertain, you can't feel empowered. It just doesn't work. So the more that we can build up that confidence through a solid foundation with something such as protocol, the more we empower our teams and our colleagues.
And then leading to that, so in a workplace, after COVID, things have changed the way we do. We send emails, write invitation. Now the word is hey, hi. There's no greetings. Do you think that also exists in a modern workplace?
Yeah, there are fundamentals with all of these things, and we've got to also be nuanced with it. But when we start with communications and interactions, whether they're in person, whether they're electronic, emails, chats, Slack, anything like that, we should start formally if we don't know someone. I am definitely not a fan of getting an email from somebody that I've never met and it starts, hey, because it makes me feel like they haven't taken the time to see who they're writing to, and they're making an assumption about whether I'm comfortable with this. I'm very happy to quickly tell someone they don't have to call me Ms. Wilson. They're welcome to call me by my first name, and to move to that, to create a space of comfort. But don't assume that from the get-go, especially if you're working with someone who is a higher authority, someone who is of higher rank. Show that respect first. So no matter how casual our form of contact might be, because email is thought of as more casual than sending a written letter or or some other interactions like a meeting, we still want to start with that basis of respect and allow them to come back and say, hey, we can be a little bit more casual. That's fine. In
Yes.
meetings, we need protocol to establish levels of comfort in something like how we seat people. Does the seating arrangement promote the goals of the meeting? Yeah, if you've ever gone into a meeting and nobody knows where to sit, what environment does that set from the get-go? Yeah, everybody's looking around. They're a little anxious about where they go. But if you have a meeting and there are name cards there, it's there's a breath of, oh, I know where to go. I can sit down and then we can get started versus this trying to figure out who sits where and what's going on. So by just doing some things like that, which might initially be seen as overly formal or stuffy, you just relieve the uncertainty. And that allows everyone to focus on the matter at hand rather than wondering where they're going to sit.
Often, with your expertise, again, you work with institutions and corporate communities. So we've come to a place that people want to learn protocol in different ways, soft skills, how to hold your forks, knives, and name name calling. I saw something LinkedIn that someone said, "Don't call me Mo, call me Mohammed. Your name is Mohammed. Don't call me Mo." And I
Yes.
love that
Yeah.
he would say, "Call me Mohammed, don't call me Mo." What?
Yes.
What skills would you? What advice would you give someone to listen to this info? I'm in the same place. I'm behind all this. What advice would you have for this listener right now?
I loved seeing Mohammed's post about that. I have the same reaction. I don't use a nickname, but people sometimes assume that I do, and that can be a little bit challenging. So I loved his a little bit of humor in
Yep.
it, but also telling people, don't make this assumption about me. This is my name that has been given to me, and that's what I connect with. And so I love that that was out there that allowed a
Hmm.
conversation
Hmm.
about do we, do we have nicknames? I regularly will suggest to students in my courses, don't assume a nickname unless someone tells you. That don't. Not everyone who is named Michael wants to be called Mike. Not everyone who is named Costanza wants to be called Connie. You don't know, so don't assume that, even if you're trying to be friendly in it. And I think that it does come from that place, attempting to make a connection through that type of friendliness, but it's not always accepted that way. So it goes back to, how does that person want to be treated? How do they feel respected? So assuming that the name that you see on the name tag is the one that you should use is a good place to start with that.
So I got one more question for you, Catherine. Protocol perfection, or you just embrace it as the way it is?
You can probably hear from the way I talk about it, I feel a little bit more like protocol is a vocation. But it is one that we can turn into a profession. So many of us that do this work do it because we love it. We don't do it because it is going to make us the most famous person in the world. Quite the opposite. Most of us in protocol think of ourselves as wallpaper.
Yep.
That when we're doing our job well, we blend in
Hmm.
as opposed to being seen.
Hmm.
It's not a job to get into if you think that you're going to be all over the place and everybody's going to know your name. When we get together as protocol officers and we talk about this, it's probably a little bit funny to people who are outside of it because we're such geeks and nerds about it. I've had a lot of people say, I never realized anyone could talk about flags so much. And yes, we can talk about flags a lot. We can talk about seating a lot. We can talk about that, but it's because we feel so much power, empowerment in creating these opportunities for others and seeing that our work does have meaning through, yeah, yeah, seating has meaning, and we help create that, and it might sound a little bit strange to someone who's not immersed
Yeah.
in it, but that really is the opportunity that you have when you get into protocol. So I think maybe it kind of starts as a profession. Somebody might get into it. Maybe they were told in the military, you're going to be a protocol officer, because I know a lot of people who have gone through that. Or they kind of fall into it the way I did of, oh, I think I need this skill
Mhm.
because of the work that I'm doing. But we embrace it and we really love it. And it becomes more than just a job to so many of us.
Last question. You live and breathe with protocol. You
Right.
do this every day. What do you say to the younger generation who are coming out from universities, colleges, that they want to go out there and to be the best for themselves? Either what industry
Mhm.
they go in, what sector, what job occupation. What would you tell them? What would be your advice for them? Someone watching right now say, I'm finishing university this year, no job, but I want to learn to be the best of myself. What advice would you give today, Catherine?
I would say that getting into protocol really does give you a lot of opportunities to be the best version of yourself. It allows you to be involved in some, incredible opportunities, whether that's developing partnerships that create opportunities for students who would not have had them before. It creates scholarships, it creates international study, educational programs. You could be working with a nonprofit that is going out and changing lives, and by setting that foundation for it. And protocol is also very nimble. You can go into a lot of different industries. So it gives the person who's studying it a wide range of things that they could do. You don't have to feel restricted into, oh, well, I studied this, so now I have to go into the military or I have to have a federal government job. No, you can go and do just about anything in the world. We have protocol officers who work in corporate, who work in higher ed, churches, nonprofits, everywhere. So you've got a lot of opportunity to explore what will make you feel most fulfilled in doing this. And I've been really fortunate that when I start telling students or recent graduates about this work, they start to see that. Oh, this really is an interesting
Mhm.
thing that I could do. Maybe they will want to go into diplomatic service, and that's fantastic. But maybe they want to go and work with another
Mhm.
industry and be that foundation for success and have a part in that. So it's, I love being able to tell them how much opportunity there is there for protocol professionals.
I've got one more question for you because I'm intrigued to hear. So we talk about
Okay.
this generation. What about the CEO in the boardroom? We have merger acquisition, M&A. We have meetings that last for hours in a boardroom, directors from all industry, oil and gas, diplomats. What advice do we give them when it comes to respecting protocol and also using that to build successful brand or even an empire?
I would give the same advice to them, maybe in a little bit different wording, but the same advice that I would to anybody. This is how protocol makes your job easier. This is how protocol makes sure that you're going to be successful. And why I want to spend 5 or 10 or 15 or however many minutes I can get on your schedule
Mhm.
going through all of these things. I've had those conversations with security professionals or with, like I said before, catering or something, and also with vice presidents and presidents. And when you put it in the context of this will make sure that you get done what you want and need to get done in this, then it clicks. It's not helpful to go in and say, okay, it's time for your protocol lesson for the day, and we're going to talk about this because they have so many other topics that they're working on and many other things. But when it is meaningful to them, when it is related to what is important, then then all of a sudden it all comes together. It becomes part of that whole, and that makes the connection. By spending the time with them to say, this is how you address this person, this is who is with them, and kind of how they fit into the hierarchy, then they feel more comfortable. They can go in, they can accomplish what they need to. I don't need to talk to them about why we have forms of address or anything. I just need to give them that that basis through the this is what it means to you conversation.
Catherine, you've been amazing. And I want to know
Thank you.
how our audience can find you. So now we are on LinkedIn. What about means that audience can find you to reach out to you for all sort of coaching and about your organization? How can we or us find you?
So please do find me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to connect with anyone, and I love getting to know others around the world and around different industries and connecting with them and seeing what you're doing. So LinkedIn is a great place. Another place that you can find me is through Protocol and Diplomacy International, Protocol Officers Association. I have the humbling honor of serving as the president of the board there, so you can easily find me on the website there and connect. And I also have a website where I talk about my private consulting that I do in this, which is cmwilsonconsulting.com. And I welcome you to check that out and connect with me there. And would love to get to know any of your listeners and find out what they're interested in protocol.
Catherine, it's been an amazing, wonderful pleasure to listen to you. And you've had it all. Amazing, talented, live and breathe with protocol. Protocol is just about your awareness and be respectful to who around you. This episode was sponsored by the British Academy, and we are leadership in etiquette, diplomacy, and protocol. And remember that etiquette is not old fashioned, it's still live and breathe. Catherine, with a pleasure. And stay tuned. This is Manners Maketh Mic.